Anyone who has the schus to look in the psukim of Oz Yasher that we're going to learn this Shabbos, Shabbos Shira, will notice something unique about the structure of these psukim. The Gemara in Megillah calls it a half a brick on top of a full brick. That the way the psukim need to be structured in the Torah is with large amounts of space of white cloth in between the psukim, leaving it looking like bricks being piled on top of each other. And why? What about a Shira causes it to have this gap, this white space, this cloth, this extra gap in between the psukim? Says the Heilige Sfasemes, Chus Yagan Aleinu. If you look back to the beginning of Klal Yisrael, going into Mitzrayim, we find that the psukim are written in a way that Chazal call it a parsha stuma. As opposed to there being a gap, a space of a few letters in between the two parshas, the parshas are squished together, with one being incapable of seeing where Parshas Vayigash ends and Parshas Vayechi begins. It's one long run-on sentence. Says this Sfasemes, it's not just the way the psukim are written, but that is what Gullus is. Gullus is one long run-on sentence. Gullus is when a person's so caught up in the rat race, when a person's so involved in the avodah that they're doing, that they don't have the ability to stop and think. The white space, the gaps in the parshas, Chazal tell us, were there in order to allow Moshe Rabbeinu the time to contemplate, to think, and to review over what the Rabbanan had told him. The inability to have time in our lives to stop and think, to be able to stop and to contemplate, to breathe, and to be able to think about what we're doing, that itself is a representation of Gullus. Says this Fasamis, therefore the song which represents the Geula, Oz Yasher, and every song needs to contain within it not just the regular amount of white space, but an abundance of white space. Because a song can only be created when a person is able to stop and to think and to contemplate, to have the yeshiva das, the peace of mind, to sit properly. That's where a song is able to be created. That's where a song is able to be sung. Says this Vasemes, as we left Mitzrayim, the gaps became wider and wider, and it gave us the ability, Oz Yasher Moshe, to stop and to sing the song of Oz Yasher, to stop and to recognize what Geula really looks like. Shabbos is that concept of Nagunim. Shabbos is the idea, especially Shabbos Shira, of being able to stop and to sing. During the 6 days of the week, a person's too caught up in moving from place to place. A person doesn't have the proper yeshiva das to sing songs properly. Comes in Shabbos. Shabbos allows us to sit with our families by the Suda. Shabbos allows us to have the time and the peace of mind to be able to sing Nagunim. Shabbos allows us to breathe more. Shabbos allows us to stop, to have that extra gap, that extra white space, to be able to sit and to contemplate what our purpose is, what our tachlis is, what we're really here for, and to be able to connect to the Rabbanan Shalom through the power of song. The koyach of Shabbos Shira is the ability to stop, to sing, to find that white space in our life, to be able to sing songs properly. Rabbi Freifeld once caught a few of his students sitting in a not kosher restaurant eating not kosher food. And the students saw Rabbi Freifeld eyeing them through the window, and they were nervous about what the consequences were going to be once they got back to yeshiva. Rabbi sure enough, Rabbi called them out of the classroom, but instead of going ahead and giving them a punishment, told them, walk with me down the block. They walked down the block, went to a yeshiva, and walked into a svarim store. He picked up a few Zmira Shabbos, he bought it for all of them, and brought them back to the classroom. They sit down on their desks, having no clue what's going to happen, and Rabbi Freifeld tells them, open up to the Zmiris of Leil Shabbos, the Zmiris of Friday night. And Rabbi Freifeld begins singing with them and teaching them the niggin, Rachim b'chazdecha, Rachim b'chavazdecha, Alamcha, Tzureinu. And he goes ahead and begins singing with them this niggin again and again, Yibana HaMikdash. And the boys are sitting there learning and singing the niggin again and again. And finally, one of the boys stops and gives a big sigh and says, Rebbe, if I felt this way all the time, I would never do another Aveira in my life. This is what the Zmiris of Shabbos are. The Zmiris of Shabbos mean that we have the time to sit and to contemplate, not to be caught up in the Ruach Shtos, not to be caught up in the run-on sentences of the 6 days of the week. But Hashem should help that we should go ahead and utilize this koyach every Shabbos, and especially on Shabbos Shira, to sit with our families, to sing Nagunim, to remind ourselves what our tachlis is, and by utilizing that power of the koyach of the Nagunim, and Rich Hashem to be able to take that with us throughout the 6 days of the week. Have a great Shabbos.
Noam HaShabbos